And that's what American needs to do. It needs to punch back. It just has to stay on that course as opposed to starting on one course and then doing what Vasu Raja said, which was the zigzag. When other airlines zig, we zag. I don't think that that's going to be the approach to take from here. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of season 10, the Big 10 of the Airways podcast. I am your co-founder and co-host, Rohan Anand, along with our amazing producer, Helwing Biamisar. It's been an exciting week. In the past week, we have had Bad Bunny win the Grammys, or win our Grammy. We have the Super Bowl coming up this weekend. We've had American Airlines and United Airlines that have continued to double down on gates, capacity, and more schedules out of Chicago O'Hare, which is my home airport. So that's cool. In a small tribute to Catherine O'Hara, Moira Rose, or Kate of Home Alone series, who passed away this past week. But we will never forget the homage that American Airlines paid to her, chaotically running through Terminal 3 of O'Hare and the separation to the H gates or the K gates. In that regard, American Airlines and United Airlines are now going to be adding a lot of capacity for the upcoming year at the Chicago O'Hare market. And what is interesting about this particular example is that it is one of the last remaining vestigial hubs that existed for two airlines competing for dominant market share. And by dominant, I would say anywhere between the 20 to 40% range for each carrier since before airline deregulation. Deregulation took place in the late 1970s and into the early 1980s. The hub and spoke model for many airlines existed after that. And we saw a lot of dual hubs that existed all over the country kind of go away. There was a point in time where United and Continental both had a hub in Denver, for example. Delta and American had a hub in Dallas Fort Worth. And in this final example that we're going through here, American and United have a hub each in Chicago O'Hare. Not to mention that these hubs for both airlines largely duplicated roles in the sense that they connected small regional cities into the hub. They flew transatlantic, they flew transpacific, a couple of Latin American flights, leisure flights, high frequencies to important business markets like New York and LA and San Francisco. And then also having the corporate credit card share in in the cities. When things changed after 9/11, we saw a shift in the dynamics of the airline industry where two airlines competing for dominant market share at one single hub started to become less of a profitable endeavor. Delta Airlines, for example, shut down its DFW hub in 2005. A lot of people describe it as the S curve, where essentially, even if an airline like the dominant airline has anywhere from 5 to 10% greater market share than the second largest airline, they're going to have the upper hand when it comes to handling losses, opportunity costs, hiring more people, getting access to greater gates, and of course, being able to sustain losses over a period of time. The airline results that come out every quarter generally don't like to go into hub profitability levels. And we know that there's a lot of sources all over the internet that describe hub profitability based upon people trying to back numbers into an analysis using financial statement records or trying to look at cost per enplanement, for example. Gauge is another big indicator, and frequency of schedules. In the case of Chicago O'Hare, we saw that American Airlines and United Airlines after 9/11 remained largely tit for tat at the airport. Across town, Southwest Airlines grew a hub at Midway Airport, especially after it acquired AirTran and ATA Airways. And Southwest is also now at O'Hare Airport itself. So there is that contender that is also going to be part of this next phase of what we'll see in Chicago. 20 years ago, American Airlines flew from Chicago O'Hare to Delhi, Shanghai, London Heathrow multiple times a day, Paris, Frankfurt, Brussels, Dublin, Manchester, Moscow, Buenos Aires, and had an intercontinental hub that looked like it was basically the main international gateway for American to the world. 20 years later, American doesn't fly any trans-Pacific routes from Chicago, no Latin American routes, and the only year-round service it maintains from Chicago O'Hare is to London Heathrow. Leading up to the pandemic, American Airlines had a chief revenue officer named Vasu Raja. And Vasu's intention was to try to spin a narrative that American was not going to abandon its Chicago O'Hare hub. Scott Kirby, who was the CEO of United Airlines, who was then the president of United Airlines, had made it very clear that when he left American to go work for United 10 years ago, that he wanted to make sure that the Chicago O'Hare hub for United was designed and set up in such a manner that it would be the dominant carrier that utilized all the assets at O'Hare and effectively would try to drive American out. Scott Kirby has made it very clear that he sees American Airlines as a weak competitor to United and Delta in the U.S. airline market, and that also Chicago O'Hare should only have one dominant airline, and that is United. Things have changed. Vasu Raja is no longer with American, and American has hired Nat Pieper, who is the chief commercial officer at American. He has a really long history of working for airlines like Delta and Alaska and One World Alliance. And we saw in earlier parts of this year that American is going to be operating its largest schedule from Chicago O'Hare in history at 550 daily flights. United retaliated, and on the day of American's earnings results, United announced that it was going to fly up to 750 daily flights from Chicago O'Hare. Then earlier this week, American retaliated on the retaliation and added more frequencies from Chicago O'Hare. So the great news is that this will benefit all Chicago flyers like myself greatly, although I feel like I'm spending a pretty decent sum of money on fares for summer travel. And so, the prices might go down. We'll know more, I guess, when that inventory and demand patterns kind of shape their way out through the spring. That being said, a lot of people are concerned that this is going to be a fruitless endeavor for American Airlines because they believe that if Scott Kirby's numbers are true, that the hub is losing anywhere from $800 million to $1 billion a year. Also using the revenue and profit and loss figures from 2025 for American compared to United. They also believe that United, by adding more capacity into O'Hare, according to Scott Kirby, is profitable, makes about $500 million. I think that was the number that Scott said in his earnings report. So I guess, Helwing, with all this to say, the logic is that these capacity wars are not going to be absorbed by the market at premium fare levels or at the demand pattern levels that will help generate strong yields for both airlines. And it's going to be a money losing venture. And one of them is going to blink. And the one that is not equipped to be able to win this is American. So that is the thesis of what is going on in American Airlines in Chicago O'Hare this summer, and also what that might spell for CEO of American Airlines, Robert Isom, as this continues to be a huge area of focus for his airline, for his employees, and for their customers for 2026. United sees this year and the year ahead to be a really good year for it. United is also very exposed, like heavily exposed to international markets. And with the softening of demand that Cirium has released from last year to this year, there has been some concern over whether the airlines will still be able to profitably, make good use of the summer like they have in previous seasons post-pandemic. The revenge travel, so to speak, was very helpful to bolster the bottom lines for Delta and United during 2022, 23, and into 24, because they essentially had a lot of transatlantic and trans-Pacific capacity that after COVID, passengers wanted to fly on. And American, having retired a lot of its wide body capacity during the pandemic in order to be able to cut down on its debt levels, didn't have the ability to clap back. It didn't have the ability to add as much transatlantic or trans-Pacific capacity for what is now called business leisure markets, where people are paying a premium for some leisure destinations like Europe travel in the summer. Um, and I do believe that it is quite necessary to call out that the political climate in the United States is making it challenging for foreigners to not only transit from their originating countries into the United States, but those people are also connecting through countries like Germany and the United Kingdom and France and Spain and Italy and others in order to be able to visit America or Latin America for that matter. So, with the continued restrictions that are being put in place, it's not surprising to me that the demand patterns have weakened for the upcoming year.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thai Airways International. Here are a few quick facts about this proud carrier. Founded in 1960 and operating out of Bangkok, Thai Airways is national flag carrier of Thailand and a founding member of the Star Alliance. Headquartered in Suvarnabhumi Airport, it connects Thailand to destinations worldwide and is renowned for its signature Thai hospitality and service philosophy. The airline launched its brand new Airbus A321neo fleet, entering service with lie-flat business class seats, refreshed cabins, and the latest cabin technology. Whether you're planning a business trip, beach escape, or connection into Thailand's long-haul network, keep an eye out for the A321neo. Thai Airways, smooth as silk.
What do we think is going to happen here? Well, I personally think that we can't really speak until the data comes out. This is a make or break year in many ways. I do believe that Chicago, while I might be biased, Chicago's importance as a market to American Airlines hub structure cannot be understated. Without it, it essentially does not have the kind of placement in a very geographically important part of the country, which is the Midwest and the upper Midwest region and the city of Chicago. Chicago's economy is up there with Paris and London and Tokyo, and it's important. It's such an important market that walking away from it is not like walking away from Denver or San Juan, Puerto Rico. American has not only invested so much into the hub, but also they have thousands of employees that are based out of there. Moving 10,000 employees out of a hub over a 1-year period is not quite possible. There was discussion about how American de-emphasized its Chicago, O'Hare, and Philadelphia hubs during the pandemic to focus more on the Sun Belt region, which mainly consisted of Dallas-Fort Worth, Charlotte, Miami, and Phoenix. And that for a period of time, American was only flying single daily frequencies to important markets like Seattle, San Francisco, San Diego, while United was flying anywhere from like 3 to 10. But I think that the American Airlines commercial strategy under Nat Pieper, with him being there, is definitely aimed at retaining its share that it once had in Chicago, going back to the pre-pandemic levels, but also really trying to restate and reclaim the fact that they can operate there. Now, operating there at a loss versus operating there at a profit is a different story altogether. And the one challenge that I'm seeing here is that Robert Isom, the CEO of American, is the one that is speaking to the commercial strategy. In previous years, he allowed Vasu Raja to speak to that. But now it has to be addressed and it has to be promoted by the commercial leadership team at American Airlines. When you look at United and when you look at United's presence on an earnings call, while things may filter through Scott Kirby, you can definitely tell that there's a semblance of trust among all of the lieutenants that report up to him. whether they're people from finance, operations, United Express, digital, technology, all the way to alliances and network. The narrative and the bullet points are straightforward. In the case of Robert Isom, you can discuss as much as you want to about how you're on the right path. However, you need to have talking points behind that. And the talking points behind what they're saying that Chicago's path is on right now is mostly superlatives. It's mostly style as opposed to substance. The substance is in the schedule. The substance is present in terms of available inventory for sale. Whether or not that inventory is generating the returns and expectations that American has set for itself with whatever guidance, capacity wise or revenue wise, that it forecasts, that's what's going to be critical to speak to in the first quarter earnings of 2026 and for the remaining quarters of the year. And so I think that a year from now, certainly even sooner than that, we're going to have good information on what this might look like. Now, that being said, I think that the things to look at are where is American adding capacity in places where United is absent? Well, they've done that with some of the small local markets that they've added capacity to, and also being able to just kind of punch back and flying to places like Mexico City, to Kahului, Maui, to Curacao, and also applying for gate spaces and taking gate spaces from Spirit Airlines. That also is going to be, just indications that Americans punching back. And that's what American needs to do. It needs to punch back. It can punch its way back, and it can try to set itself at least on a course to correct. It just has to stay on that course, as opposed to starting on one course and then doing what Vasu Raja said, which was the zigzag. When other airlines zig, we zag. I don't think that that's going to be the approach to take from here. Another thing that I know that American Airlines is doing is that they are adding capacity in Chicago O'Hare that is only going to be served on 2-class regional jets. That's another big risk for them to take, essentially, because when you add premium seats, that means you add premium costs. When you add premium costs, that means that you expect premium revenue will be able to cover those costs. If they're not there, then you're essentially going to go from maybe being marginally profitable on an Embraer CRJ aircraft with less than 50 seats to unprofitable on a 64 to 75 seater jet with first class. So essentially, I will be watching this very closely. I personally don't have much to predict at this time because I'm going to be going off of what I know. And as a Chicago-based flyer who travels often to Dallas, I'm grateful that United, for example, and American have so many frequencies. But as a flyer too, do I want to see the fares go down? Of course. So that will be interesting to watch for me. The other thing that has nothing to do with American Airlines at Chicago O'Hare, but has everything to do with Southwest Airlines, is that tomorrow I will be flying on Southwest for the first time since it debuted its new commercial model, in the sense that I purchased a seat last minute to Salt Lake City using points, and I purchased a fare product that has an assigned seat. So after flying Southwest Airlines hundreds of times in my life, for the very first time, I'm going to board an aircraft and I'm going to be assigned 6D as my actual seat. And I look forward to seeing what the new Southwest is like. All right. Well, thank you again for listening to the Airways podcast. So we look forward to having you join us again in 2026.